what happens is, as we find good reasons for believing stuff, the gods vanish. The gods' ability to interact with us and the evidence for the gods is directly, is inversely proportional with our ability to investigate and discover the truth about reality. Miracles decline just as videotape starts climbing up.
Good to have you here, everyone, and I mean that. This one genuinely kept me thinking long after I finished watching it. Dr. Kenny Rhodes is a PhD theologian specializing in the metaphysics of Thomas Aquinas, and he is sitting down with Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience on Modern Day Debate to tackle whether there is actually good evidence for God. What makes this particular stretch of the conversation so worth your time is that it stops being about abstract philosophy and starts becoming about a much bigger and more uncomfortable pattern, one that Matt puts into words in a way that is hard to shake. Stick with this one all the way through, because the final minute of this clip is the moment the whole thing has been quietly building toward, and it lands differently than you might expect. While you're here, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. Wherever you are in the world, right now I genuinely want to know. It always makes this feel less like a channel and more like an actual conversation. All right, let us get into it.
What was the first sentence of that?
He said, as a fellow atheist, I'm glad to see Matt at least humble himself and not call the other person names. I don't think they're referring to Kenny. I think that, I don't know what they're referring, though.
So okay, let me hit this super quick. Don't do the I was where you were, I'm better than you. Don't do that as an atheist. Don't do that as a Christian. It would be absolutely vile for me to show up and say, Kenny, I used to be where you were and I found my way out. And it would be absolutely vile for Dr. Rhodes to look at me and go, I used to share your concerns, but I found my way out. To put yourself as the bigger person. Yes, I didn't call anybody names, and I didn't get particularly upset today, but there's also nothing wrong with having an impassioned plea for something. So rather than worrying about, oh, I'm so glad somebody acted so much better, let's focus on, can we argue better? Can we present evidence for things? I don't want the theists name calling and smacking people around in chat. I don't want the atheists doing it. I'd like to be able to have a discussion. If we get somewhere, cool. If we don't, at least we tried, and maybe we'll know how to do it better next time.
You got it.
I wholeheartedly agree with Matt there. Being passionate, nothing wrong with that at all.
No matter how much Kenny and I argue tonight, I'm sure that we could go hang out sometime. If people seem to think that, like, ooh, it came to verbal blows, all of a sudden now we're at war. No, we're not at war. Heck, we probably would have played for the same softball team at one point until I tore my arm.
We might be able to play music together too.
I
could show you a few things.
Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
You got it. Jake 4D, thanks, sir. Your question says, this essence is Deepak Chopra. And they said, Dr. Smith, Dr. Rhodes, you are adding words, let's see, behind it. And I don't understand this. They say, please stop using necessary without justification. So I'll give you a chance to respond to that, as I guessing you have a thought on that, Dr. Rhodes.
Nah, it seemed like more of a comment, so I'll just let it pass as that.
Gotcha. Daniel Rathburn says, let's see. We'll entertain it, because it is interesting. I think as long as we don't go too far down the rabbit hole, they asked, when does the ship of Theseus lose its essence and become a new ship? Or no longer?
Never.
And I would agree, because the ship of Theseus doesn't have any essence. Nothing does.
Juicy. And
can't lose something.
At least we agree on the conclusion.
Can't lose something you never had.
You got it. And then Flamio says, there is good evidence for deities, like there is good evidence for round earth. And I think they mean they told me they meant a globe earth. It is all deniable. A description for who we are and what we do is your answer for the deity question.
I got nothing.
Sounds like a comment.
I'm confused by that as well. Sigifredo Sarabia, thank you for your question. Says, Dr. Rhodes, if using the quote the essences to describe a thing, does God rely on these essences for us to describe God as all good, omniscient, powerful, etc.?
I'm not
sure. It kind of sounds like they're trying to figure out how, from logical necessity, you got to the God of classical theism, and that you can look up.
I think that's what the question was asking too.
Okay. I don't want to get bogged down in it, but
this is one of the moments in the debate that does not get talked about enough, because what Matt does here is not just make a point about tone. He is making a point about intellectual honesty. Someone in the chat had commented that they were glad to see Matt being so humble and not calling Kenny names, and then added that they used to be where Matt was 30 years ago, and Matt stops everything to address that framing directly. He says it would be absolutely vile for him to show up and tell Kenny that he used to be where Kenny is and he found his way out, and equally vile for Kenny to tell Matt the same thing in reverse. To put yourself as the bigger person in that way, to frame your own worldview as the destination that the other person just hasn't arrived at yet, is not an argument. It is condescension dressed up as civility. And I want to sit with that for a second because I think this matters. One of the most common moves in these conversations is to treat the other side as simply confused or immature, as if the disagreement is not about evidence or reasoning, but about how far along the person is in their personal journey. Matt is explicitly rejecting that framing from both directions. He does not want atheists doing it to theists. He does not want theists doing it to atheists. He wants better arguments and clearer evidence. That is it. And then something happens that is so quiet you could almost miss it. A viewer asks Kenny to stop using the word necessary without justification. The moderator gives Kenny a chance to respond. And Kenny said, and these are his exact words. Nah, it seemed like more of a comment, so I'll just let it pass. He declines to defend the central terminology of his entire argument in the Q and A on camera after an entire debate built on that word.
Same thing as what I said. What we see is composed of parts, and there is a logical implication. For example, here's another principle that's self-evident and undeniable. The per accidens necessarily implies the per se, meaning that if there is the accident of tallness, it must necessarily be in a per se, a substance. So if I see existence as an accidental feature of reality, that nothing within reality has existence in and of itself, that means that existence is accidental. It implies necessarily logically that there is a per se existence there. Something, someone.
Gotcha. And this one coming in, appreciate your question. Nasacius, appreciate it, says this Thomistic stuff is presuppositional apologetics. And they say abstractions are not a third state of reality and that there is no penness. We'll give you a chance to respond to that, Dr. Rhodes.
The reason why I said what I said right at the beginning is I said I'm starting with the nature of reality and created being, and then deducing and by abduction, by way of remotion, going back to what is necessary to account for what we see in existence.
And I'll jump in with two things. First of all, please stop calling everybody a presuppositionalist just because you don't understand it. Please, atheists, please, 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 please stop doing that. Not everybody who says something that is philosophical and it is analytic as opposed to synthetic is necessarily a presuppositionalist.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that because I repudiate presuppositional apologetics.
Now, that doesn't mean that they have good reasons, and you can go after that. But I would point
I
out
wouldn't
that one of the
expect you
things
to agree with that.
one of the things that Kenny just said is that he started with a created being. And I do the same thing, except I just start with a being and try to figure out whether or not it's created. Because if you start by believing that the being is created, you're going to find a creator.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I should have said existent being. Yeah, Matt's right with that one.
And then comes something that I genuinely did not expect. Because Matt defends Kenny. A viewer in chat calls Kenny's argument presuppositional apologetics, which is a specific school of Christian philosophy that essentially argues you have to presuppose God in order to reason at all. And Matt immediately pushes back on that label. He tells the atheists in chat to stop calling everything presuppositionalism just because they do not understand it. Kenny's argument is not presuppositionalism. It is Thomistic classical theism, and those are different things. Kenny is grateful. He thanks Matt, and then Matt does the thing. He points out that the viewer said Kenny started with a created being and worked backward. And Matt says that is what he does too. Except Matt just starts with a being and tries to figure out whether it is created. Because if you start by already believing the being is created, you will find a creator. That is not investigation. That is confirmation. And Kenny's response to this is one of the most revealing moments of the entire Q&A section. He says, yeah, you're right. I should have said existent being, not created being, existent being. That is a live correction of his own framing under the pressure of Matt's observation. And the thing is, it matters. Because the entire argument Kenny has been making all night is that composite existence requires a grounding. But if you start by calling reality created, you have already loaded the conclusion into the premise. Matt caught it, and Kenny admitted it.
You got it. And Dustin Ellerby, thanks for your question, said, describing something that doesn't exist in reality doesn't make it exist. Has anyone ever seen a god create anything? No. So why think that's the case, Dr. Rhodes?
I don't know, like the illustration Matt and I used earlier, I don't need to see the one who started the fire in the wood to know that there's a reason why that wood caught on fire. Something started it.
Yeah, the difference is...
Doesn't have to be a person, but yeah.
The difference is you're reaching a conclusion that it's a person, not necessarily the fire, but with everything else. And that's the point, is that maybe that fire was started by a person, maybe it was started by a bolt of lightning, and maybe it started by something else that we don't know or understand. And so when I look at the universe and say, what is the explanation for everything? My beginning point is, I don't know. And when we look around, we gradually learn more and more, and we build up good explanations for the things we know. It's not like, you may have objections to whether or not we categorize things by clades, but it's not like we're wrong about whether or not there's a cell with a nucleus, and it's not like we're wrong about whether or not, this is the way biology by and large works. Whereas once upon a time, we didn't have a germ theory of disease. We had spirits, and this was people's explanation for things. What happens is, as we find good reasons for believing stuff, the gods vanish. The gods' ability to interact with us and the evidence for the gods is is inversely proportional with our ability to investigate and discover the truth about reality. Miracles decline just as videotape starts climbing up, above and beyond. It's just, but that's me preaching, not just answering the question.
We'll jump.
What I would just simply add is that I can know, though, rationally and necessarily, that whatever started that fire had heat, either virtually, imminently, or formally. I can know that for certain.
One more time?
I can know that whatever started that fire, that agency had the ability to start that fire either virtually, imminently, or formally. That just simply means I don't have to.
My only problem was that you put the word agency in there, which.
Well, I didn't use agency as capital A, so to speak, but I would consider natural law some sort of, unintelligible agency, something that is causing something else in a certain sense.
And here is where the segment closes with something that I think is genuinely the most memorable line of the entire debate. Kenny returns one more time to the burnt wood analogy. He says he does not need to see the one who started the fire to know something started it. Matt agrees and then makes a distinction that Kenny cannot escape. He says the problem is that Kenny is reaching the conclusion that it was a person, but the fire does not require a person. It could have been lightning. It could have been something we do not know or understand yet. And when Matt looks at the universe and asks, what is the explanation for everything? His beginning point is, I do not know. And that is not a cop-out. That is intellectual honesty. And then he delivers the line that reframes the entire debate in a single sentence. He says what happens is, as we find good reasons for believing things, the gods vanish. The gods' ability to interact with us and the evidence for the gods is inversely proportional to our ability to investigate and discover the truth about reality. Miracles decline just as videotape starts climbing up. Think about what that means historically. In an era before cameras, miraculous healings and divine apparitions were everywhere. As soon as you introduce reliable recording technology, suddenly the miracles stop happening in verifiable ways. The pattern holds across every domain. Every time human beings develop better tools for investigating reality, the supernatural retreats further from the territory that can be examined. That is not just a philosophical point. That is an observable empirical trend across the entire history of human inquiry. And Kenny's response, arguing that whatever started the fire must have had heat either virtually or formally, does not address it. He reintroduces agency through the back door and partially walks it back when Matt calls it out. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.